from the Avian Reconditioning Center, Carol McCorkle, and Paula Ashby. We appreciate everybody that came. We know it's raining horribly outside. Let me know if I'm too loud. I've never had a microphone before, so I have no idea if you can hear me. Carol, after graduating from Colorado Mountain College with a VETech degree, Carol was granted rehabilitation and education permits by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife and Florida Wildlife Commission. From 1986 to 1990, Carol did a raptor rehabilitation under individual permit and then worked for the Audubon Center for Birds of Prey from 1990 until 1999. She served on the Florida Wildlife Rehabilitation Association board for nearly 10 years, serving as president from 1996 to 1998. Along with her falconer husband, Scott, she began the Avian Reconditioning Center, also known as our ARC, in 2001. And ARC became Eagle exempt and open to the public in 2004. And you are located in Apopka, correct?
We are located in Apopka.
And this is open for the public, so if anybody ever wants to come and visit, they can do that during the week, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
That's good.
And then Paula Ashby, and by the way, I've been here for like 30 years and never heard of it before, so there's probably people in the audience that haven't heard about it either. Now, Paula Ashby has been working with Birds of Prey since 1996, when she began volunteering at the Audubon Center for Birds of Prey after meeting Reese Collins at the Sunset Cruise for Eagles on the St. John's for racing in an event earlier that year. Paula volunteered at CBOP from 1996 to 2001, and she and then her husband, Randy Stack, sponsored the Osprey enclosure for the Windspread 2000 renovation. And Paula met Carol while volunteering and has been with the ERC since it opened. She handles a variety of tasks, including presenting and coordinating education programs like tonight, events, managing the resource stores, and bookkeeping, but also she works very close with the amazing raptors that we're gonna go and look at today.
Center, or ARC, as she said, and we are located in Apopka, Florida, off of Luster Road. And we are open every Saturday from 10 until 3, weather permitting. When we see this kind of stuff coming, we pack up and move out, because boy, this is a mess. But we are there on Saturdays, so please come out, and we have lots of events throughout the year. We've got some newsletters up here too that kind of explain some of the things that we have ongoing. So tonight what you're going to see is just a cross-section of some of our favorite birds, although they're all our favorite birds, and we're going to introduce them to you. These birds have either been injured in the wild, and therefore they can no longer live in the wild, or they have been raised in captivity to be what we call an education ambassador. All our birds and all our activities are permitted by both the state and the federal government. And that's how we're here tonight, to present to you. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Paula, and really cool guy. Yeah.
Oh.
Hi everybody, and so the support of Orange Audubon means so much to a place like ours because, as Carol said, we don't get state or federal funding. We depend on the kindness of our patrons and people like you that care about these magnificent birds of prey to help with our funding. So the fact that Orange Audubon has been supporting us for years really means so much to us. So this is Whisper, and Whisper is a 19-year-old common barn owl. But I always beg to differ with that because there's nothing common about these birds. They are absolutely spectacular, and the barn owl is actually found in Central Florida, but you rarely get to see this bird. They are almost strictly nocturnal, but over the last few years, they have become the least common breeding owl here in Central Florida. And a lot of that is because of not only habitat loss, but habitat change. When that habitat converts, it creates issues just as serious as when that habitat is completely lost. Barn owls are almost primarily rodent hunters. So they will cover over 100 acres of hunting territory every night. They need those open lands. They need those farmlands where they're going to find an abundance of rodents. That's also the areas that they're going to call home. Now, although birds of prey are only at the nest for about 5 months while they're actually restoring the nest, breeding and raising the young, they need places to safely roost. And so those areas are going to be, for this species, barns and silos and areas that have those nice little sheltered areas where they can get into. They're also going to nest in those areas by just taking some substrate in and putting it up on those raptors and laying their eggs. They are cavity nesters, so they love trees with big natural cavities, but we don't have very many of those left. So they are looking at other options, including man-made nest boxes. Barn owls are actually really unique. They're found on every continent except Antarctica. And here in Florida, they breed year-round except for July and August. It's just too hot to do anything during that. So they will lay usually 3 to 5 eggs, sometimes more. And it's interesting what they have found after years of study is they seem to almost have some kind of an internal birth control. If prey is plentiful, they will have more eggs. If prey is scarce, they're going to lay fewer. I guess they know they can't support that many young. And so they want to be able to care for those young that they do have to the best of their ability, bringing home all of that prey. During the 3 months, while the young barn owls are growing up, the average family unit, which we'll call maybe 4 chicks and 2 adults, will eat over 1,000 mice.
Wow.
So that is a big pile of mice, and you can understand how this natural pest control would be so much more beneficial for us than the extremes that we go to take care of these rodents. What we find is, especially with the sticky paper rodent traps, they are absolutely terrible, especially for our smallest owls here, the screech owls. They will get stuck to that, and it really does serious damage to their feet. We've had little screech owls actually lose a foot to that sticky paper. The other choice usually is rodenticide, and we all know how that works. And so if they eat enough of that, they will actually perish from it. They'll actually bleed out just like the mice do. So if natural cavities are prevalent, they're going to go ahead and lay their eggs in there. The young are going to hatch in around 30 days, which is usually average for most birds of prey. You can get specific, but we'll just throw that out there. And then the young will stay there and be fed by the mom and the dad for the first few weeks. They're going to start testing their wings. They're going to start branching. And then usually somewhere around 8 to 10 weeks, they're going to take their first flights. By 12 weeks old, they are full grown.
Wow.
So it is absolutely amazing. Whisper is a little bit unsteady on her feet. She's 19 and she has severe arthritis now.
Oh,
So
no.
we treat her with a combination of 2 medications, and she has improved tremendously. We spotted the first signs of this were a little bit of inflammation. So we checked these birds very carefully, and from there we realized what was happening with her and got her started on these protocols. So yes, she gets a very nice foot massage every time she is on. Did you have a question?
How long is kind of the life expectancy?
Life expectancy is an interesting question. An individual barn owl can probably live in the wild somewhere around 15 to 18 years, but if you factor the average lifespan of barn owls in a certain area, it is going to be much, much lower. 7 out of 10 don't reach adulthood. And a lot of those problems are attributed directly to human interaction or something that we have created. So a lot of the problems, in addition to habitat loss and change, we have electrocutions, we have birds that are hit by cars, they're impaled on barbed wire fences, they fly into reflective windows, especially when those lights are on at night. And so those are a lot of the issues, along with too much fertilizer, too much pesticide, running off and polluting the water sources, as well as all of their prey. So again, barn owls are really important in the scheme of things. They are the best rodent control that we can possibly have here. And for some reason, we just don't seem to respect that. Owls also have some really unique features. And so they have this facial disc, and if you look at Whisper, it is actually heart-shaped. And so that lends this bird the nickname of the sweetheart or the Valentine owl. So that facial disc allows them to process sound. They've got ears just like we do on each side of the head. They're usually asymmetrical. So it allows them to listen to 3 points of sound. So they look like they're triangulating, like they're bobbleheading. So they're going to use the facial disc in the high ear and the low ear. And with barn owls, their hearing is so acute that they can actually close their eyes and go get that prey. They can pinpoint it just by sound. They have these little Okay, Whisper. She also has cataracts, but for some reason she spots my finger coming in there. Around the beak, they also have these little reptile bristles, and those are very touch sensitive. They have the same thing on their feet. And all of that is about knowing when you are in close contact with that prey so that you can grab that prey. They have the longest legs of any owl. There, she's going to show you. And they also have a shorter tail. Their wingspan is about the same as the barred owl, but their tail is much shorter. So those long legs allow them to grab and reach into those crevices where the rodents run to hide. They're also equipped with specialized feathers. So they're going to be hunting in the dark of night, almost strictly nocturnal. The barn owl feather. There it is. And so the edge of the feathers is serrated or fringed. And so what that allows for the air to pass right through their serrations, dampening the noise of their wing beats. Their wings are also really broad and paddle-shaped, so to cover the same distance, they don't have to flap quite as often. Those two factors give them almost completely silent flight, which is exactly what you've got to have if you're sneaking up on that little mouse. If you're making noise, you don't get any dinner. So I can pass this feather around, and if you'll just be gentle with it and run it across the back of your hand, that's the best way to feel how soft it is.
I have a question.
Sure.
About how many clutches of eggs do they have a year?
Usually here in Florida, I don't think they lay more than one clutch. Do they?
Oh, I think they will, because the male is sometimes not as faithful.
So if they
Yeah,
lose,
so sometimes once, you know, the little missus is almost done, he'll move on. So he
Right,
will-
but does the female just have one group of eggs per year?
Probably one in the spring and one in the fall. That would be something I'd kind of have to look into. Unfortunately, here in the state of Florida, and we were discussing this earlier today, our barn owl has hit a really hard wall. And when we started doing rehabilitation in Apopka, we used to get anywhere from 10 to 15 barn owls a year. And now between us and Audubon, we're not even getting 10.
And just to
Last year,
kind
we
of
only got 2.
put that in perspective, back in our early days, that was almost 10% of our admits were barn owls. It was very common to get a lot of them in. If they lose a clutch, they will definitely relay the
Double
eggs.
clutch, yeah.
But it's becoming just really hard for them to survive with what they're putting up with from us. So this year we have not admitted any, no, we had one.
Did we have one last
We-
winter? Maybe, yeah.
Right.
There was the time I thought I heard the hose
But we were
leaking.
talking with the Audubon Center too, and they admit 600 birds a year. They haven't had a barn owl admit in 2 years. So that shows you how.
I'm going to pass this around as well. This is a great horned owl feather. And again, if you try to keep your fingers on this part of it and not touch the other part, when Paula was talking to you about the serrated edge that helps them fly with silent wing, which it does, also take a look at the top that looks like velvet. That's something else that allows air to pass quietly as it goes over. So.
And so I'm going to trust that Whisper realizes the bathrooms are closed, and I'm just going to kind of walk her right along so everybody
And
can
we
get
have a couple of things here. If anything should happen to
a
change
close
her
look at
attitude.
her.
Was Whisper injured, or was she, did she grow up with people?
Whisper was captive bred.
Okay.
And so she originally was with a facility that was, I believe, doing programs, and she didn't work out, so they had to find a home for her. And so she came to live with us. You can see the coloration as well as I'm bringing her around. And they are spectacular in that it really helps them camouflage. The other interesting thing, if you look at the females, they have a lot of speckling. Yeah, she doesn't, don't touch them. They have a lot of speckling on the chest. They call those cinnamon spots. And so that's one way to identify the female barn owls.
So can this one actually not fly?
She can fly, but she is just really elderly now, and so she hasn't done flight demos in probably the last 5 years.
When we got her, she came from another facility that had her, and we continued her training, and we did have her do flight demonstrations. She did it for almost 5 years. But we started noticing, actually it was right before COVID hit, that when she would fly to my glove, she'd always be short. And we then got her eyes examined and we realized she had the starts of cataracts in both eyes. So we retired her at that point in time. And then the arthritis kind of kicked in.
So do you have a mew where they could fly long distances indoors?
Well, we do have mews for our education birds. That's not necessarily what we do with them. So we don't keep them in prime shape beyond the fact that some of them are trained to fly, and yes, they do. So they fly a couple of times. We have a red tail, red shoulder, Harris hawks, and all of those birds fly. But our birds that have been injured, some of them have been injured that they can't have free loft. Some of them can have small areas of free loft, but you have to understand if you've lost the tip of your wing, it changes the way we can house them in their mew. A mew, M-E-W, is a place where the bird lives. So we call them mews, we don't call them cages, and we don't call them anything else. We call them mews, because that's what they are. So did that answer your question?
I was misinformed. I thought a mew was a really long, skinny
No, that's a
root.
flight barn.
There you go.
Yeah,
Okay.
a mew is a small area where we keep our birds.
Okay.
And most falconers keep their birds in mews. And most
Okay.
mews are going to range in size anywhere from 10 to 20 feet.
Okay.
Like our eagle is in a 10 foot by 30 foot. But barns, flight barns, then we have a 100 foot, a 30 foot, a 50 foot.
Okay.
We have, so all of those vary depending on what type of bird you have.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions on the owl? Yes, sir.
Where's the most likely place to see one in the wild?
A barn owl? Well, I used to have them all the time out in the country. Believe it or not, they do like to live in sable palms. But again, we just are not seeing them a lot. Barn owls are very secretive. They do not come out generally until after dark, and they have up to 20 different vocalizations, none of which are a hoot. So they can sound like a woman being attacked, they can sound like a cricket, they can sound like something just, air leaking out of a tire. So you kind of have to train yourself to hear them, and then you can spot them. They're not so easy to spot. And I would say if you're camping down in the Kissimmee Prairie, you may run into them if you're not in great horned owl area or barred owl area.
But there's some in Apopka, right? People have seen them
We
in
used to have
Apopka.
them, and again, like I said, the last time we had an admit was back in January, and so there used to be just tons of them. But unfortunately, I think because a lot of the industries have torn things down, a lot of old trees have been torn down, and a lot of neighborhoods have changed. And so we're not, unfortunately, habitats in Florida are having a hard time, and we're having to figure out how we can recreate these habitats. Some birds, as we'll go into, are easier to adjust to different changes in their habitats than other birds.
So it's not as easy as just putting out
Water in a tree in your yard?
the wooden box or whatever.
No, not necessarily. The whole habitat has to fit them in. And if you know what you have in your areas, then that's where you want to encourage them by putting in the nest box, the water, the native plant, that sort of thing encourages what you already have. But just because you put up a barn owl nest box, a barn owl's not going to come live in it if they're not in the area.
Do they like squirrels?
Barn owls, not necessarily. Great horned
Okay,
owls like squirrels,
okay.
and red-tailed hawks are your squirrel eaters. They're the ones that like them. All right, any other questions on owls or the barn owl? Yes, sir?
What's your question?
Why did they fly?
Why do they fight?
Fly.
Oh, why do they fly?
Fast food.
Well, boy, that took a long time to get dinosaurs to fly, but they have done it, and this is where we are now.
But when there's a big giant egg, they can totally paint them.
We can paint big eggs. We can.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions on the owl? Then we're going to diurnal, correct?
Say again.
Diurnal, you know the term diurnal, but everybody in here knows the term nocturnal, right? Everybody knows nocturnal means sleep. Okay, diurnal means day. So we're going to come out and talk about some diurnal birds. And the bird that I've got on my glove right now, she really is a doll. This, of course, is a southeastern American kestrel. And if you're not familiar with why I say southeastern, It's because our southeastern American kestrel is what we call a species, a threatened species, excuse me. It used to be a species of special concern. And unfortunately, once again, we have a little bird that is a cavity dweller and that likes to live in small areas. And because we keep clearing and clear cutting, they are having a harder and harder time getting along. So the southeastern kestrel, again, like I said, their numbers are dwindling. Unfortunately, we're losing kestrels all throughout the United States. All of their numbers are dwindling. This is our smallest falcon, and this is the only, and listen to this sentence because it's important. This is the only true falcon that breeds in Florida. So all winter long, when you see peregrine falcons, that's because they're following their northern songbirds down here. But they do not stay here during the summer months. They breed all of this.
So this is
So,
still the same American kestrel that we see on the street?
so we're going to get back to the American kestrel. The American kestrel is the only true falcon that breeds in Florida. Our southeastern kestrel breeds in Florida. However, guess what's getting ready to happen right now? Already all our swallowtail kites and Mississippi kites, they are gone. They are done. If you didn't see one this year, sorry, it's over. So what's happening now, and people are already noticing it, the kingfishers are coming down. We're going to start noticing more eagles in the area, and you'll start noticing a lot more kestrels. Because we have a northern kestrel that comes down every winter and spends the winter months down here. And that's what you may hear when you hear the kestrels out there. So sometimes, I mean, we always want our northern friends to come visit us, right? But sometimes what happens is, like, I have a little kestrel that lives around us at Ark all year round. And then when wintertime comes, guess what? Those old northerners just chase them right out of the way. So my little boy has to go way to the back, and the northerners come down and take over. So that's when all of a sudden you start seeing kestrels everywhere. Going, yeah, that girl is crazy. Kestrels are on the telephone lines, are everywhere.
Is it much of a difference between the southeastern and the northern?
I'll tell you what, you better be a good ornithologist.
That's right.
And to tell you the truth, yes, sir, they can.
There is, but you
Those
better
guys
know.
that know their birds, they know their birds, and
Yeah.
they can look at them, and we actually have a male American kestrel that is a northern bird, and then we have two southeastern. We have a male southeastern and a female southeastern. And when you've got them side by side, I can go, okay, you're the male, because they tell me that you're the male from the north. But could I tell that out in the field? Oh, heck no. Heck no. Not really, you know, maybe, but there's always so much species crossover between male and female and female. Yeah, what's that gonna tell you? Yes, sir.
Has DNA had much effect, all the knowledge we have now about
DNA has a lot of help with us, but as much help as DNA has given to us about a lot of birds and information and stuff, it's also kind of confusing sometimes. I know it was a number of years ago that I was at a meeting in Gainesville, and we went to the lab where they do all this classification and this and that and the other, and this was just a few years after they had decided that they were going to relist the vulture. Anybody remember that? They were going to take the vulture and make it a stork and not a bird of prey. Yeah, well, I mean, we're all at the bird of prey center going, no, I'm joking. I love vultures. So I am joking. But I mean, it was kind of funny when they're saying, yeah, we're going to change them into storks. And we're like, so does that mean we don't take them to a raptor center anymore? And when we went up to Gainesville and we were talking to somebody up there, and that's what we said. We said, so all this DNA stuff, and he goes, I am finished following that. He goes, we have to have more evidence in conjunction with, because I guess there's too many times that, like with the vulture, they were like, yeah, let's go. And I was like, no, not really. A vulture's a raptor, period. It is. We can try and say things, but so, and I'm not smart enough to understand all of that stuff. I do know that we have tons of fun, and we've got a lot of fun coming up, because we have 3 birds that just came in this spring. And so we have a big game going. who's a male and who's a female. Because I say our little Cooper's is a male, and half of the other people say she's a female. So, interesting thing with this little bird, as I try to hold her, flap that tail up and down. That's what we call the field identifying mark. And it's kind of fun. It helps you as you're driving down the road and you spot all these doves and other birds, and then all of a sudden you'll see one doing that. And they're doing that actually for a purpose so that they can see, look out into the field and everything changes its attitude, or altitude, I should say. So if a bug's doing this or that, they can see it. These birds have the ability to hover. So they'll go out over a field and hover. We have another bird of prey that hovers. Anybody know what that one is? No, it's her. No, bird of prey. Another bird of prey.
Is it the
Oh man, I don't want to. I love hummingbirds, but I don't know if I want to.
Is it the osprey?
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 Yeah, you got it. Osprey. Osprey is the other bird of prey that.
And we have the cutest little disabled osprey in our center.
Yes, ma'am.
Just have to put that in there to see Jasper.
Southern Kestrel girls like the Northern Kestrel boys?
No. It's kind of interesting that that sort of thing doesn't happen. And why doesn't it happen? Well, common sense tells you. Our females are not ready to roll, you know, at that point in time when all these northerners come down, nor are they ready to roll. You know, so they got to go home, and then that's when because you guys all realize that birds, it's only once a year. We were talking about the barn owls. There is a little discussion, is it twice a year? But for the majority of our birds, once a year. Eagles are starting up next month.
Yeah, it's almost here. Yeah. Really? And the kestrels, as you say, they just breed during May and June. When you see kestrels in Florida,
Yes.
during those months, those are our southeasterns.
And that's how we know we have a southeastern, because we have a little fledgling come in June. We know that's a southeastern kestrel. Yes?
So migratory birds are hatching, mating before they migrate? Or
Oh,
after?
heck yeah, they're way done with it, yeah. They all started their nonsense up in the north, like the eagles won't go back up, and the northern eagles start their nonsense about March, April. Ours are finished. If our eagles start breeding in March and April, they've got a problem. That young one's probably not going to survive. Our eagles have nested. That's why we have so many problems, because you know our guys are hot to trot down here in October, and then all of a sudden you have these northerners come down and they want to take over a certain territory, and our guys are like, no, you can't do that. So that creates a lot of problems, and of course with less habitat, more problems. But so our eagles and our great horned owls, nesting season is starting next month. Yes.
What's the name of this bird?
This is a female American kestrel, and we have named her Moira.
Moira?
Moira, because we all like.
Oh, it's a shift.
Moira.
Oh, Moira.
Does it have to be with a TV show?
No, it's Peter Pan. It's a little girl. Peter Pan. Who had a question? You had a question.
There's a European kestrel.
Yes, there is.
Is that a different species, or is that
Well, yes, it's a different species.
not a different subspecies, but actually a different species?
Yes, yeah, right. And you will not see them here. If you see one here and someone reports it, they've got an escapee.
Yeah. It's a falconry bird.
It's a falconry bird.
But
And so they are here in the United States because they're a falconry bird.
But they're enormous compared to these little
Yeah,
ones.
they're a
They
lot
really
bigger
are.
than this.
On the raptors on state, I know we get a lot more black vultures coming up pretty soon in the winter. What is the percentage of eagles that stay and don't stay? Is there a certain percentage? I mean, I know there's eagles that go, there's vultures that stay.
I don't really know that I can give you percentage
Actually,
numbers,
percentage maybe
but
is
what I
better.
can say to you is that you realize almost all of our immatures leave. They all leave between, and as a matter of fact, while she's getting out this next bird, I'm going to tell you a quick story. We had an immature bald eagle that fell down out of its nest in one of the storms in Leesburg towards the end of February. And we put that bird in our flight cage, a 100-foot flight cage, and we put that bird in our flight cage. We're talking about an eagle for just a minute. So we put that bird into the 100-foot flight cage, and within a matter of a couple of days, with another eaglet too, the two of them were getting up, and it's amazing how fast Mother Nature has them go once they start getting their feathers and flying and going. It really is amazing. And so this was a bird that we we called Audubon about, and they do these certain things where they put bands on them, one to show that they were in a wild nest, and another band to show that they're banded by U.S. Fish and Wildlife. We released that bird in Leesburg the second week in March, I believe it was. Somebody took a picture of him on the beach in New Jersey.
Whoa.
The second week in April.
Wow.
Yeah, and that we know because the band showed up. The band was right there. So that's how fast they go. And almost all our immatures go, and then once they start figuring life out, they'll stay here.
They'll stay.
But even some of our adults, they go. Just like some of the northern eagles stay up north all winter, and some of them come down.
Yeah.
Who knows? Some people like it, some people don't. Any last questions on her?
Is she on the smaller side? I mean, when I see them around, they come to my yard, they seem bigger.
No, you're seeing something different then. This is a kestrel, is a kestrel, is a kestrel, period. So you're seeing something different, and your identification just might be a little off, but hang on, we'll show you some more, and you'll come and see us someday. And then we can show you all our native birds, and then you'll understand. But this is a kestrel. This is a nice sized female girl, and this is a kestrel.
How did you get this bird?
Actually, she came to us as an imprint, I believe. You know, to tell you the truth, a lot of them that come to us because their trees are cut down. And then unfortunately, because they are tiny, cute little things, people think, oh, I've got it, I'll do it. They don't know a darn thing about what they're doing. And that's one of the most harmful things that happens to our birds, because everybody thinks they're so cute, they're not so sure about letting them go again, and it's like, it's not gonna happen. You don't know what you're
They're
doing.
meat eaters, so we'll feed them hamburger.
Yeah.
That's the other difference.
Okay, and now you have that sound down in your head. You listen for that, okay? Because the northerners sound just the same.
They do, they're very noisy. So this is sable. Does anyone have a clue what kind of a bird sable is?
Short
Come
tail.
on. Short-tailed hawk, yes. So there are only about 250 breeding pair in the United States, all of them right here in southern Florida. There are healthier, larger populations, well, not necessarily healthier, but healthier in number populations down through Central and South America. But our population is distinctly different, and so if we lose this population, it would just be devastating. So Dr. Ken Meyer of the Avian Research and Conservation Institute has been studying these birds for 22 years. He has got transmitters on a few of these birds, but they have all been trapped as adults. They are very secretive nesters. So he has only spotted about a dozen nests in all of the time doing this. They like to nest really high. They will nest as high as 90 feet up in heavily wooded trees. So it's hard to spot the nest. They have spotted the few by having actual spotters following these birds and watching where they're going. The reason that they think the reproductive rate is low and they are not populating is because when they find egg failures at the nest and they DNA test those, they tend to be more female eggs that are failing. So there just aren't enough females back out there in the population. But they are amazing birds. They are buteos, so they are in the soaring hawk family, but they are habitual bird hunters. And here in Florida, their favorite snack is the red-winged blackbird. There was one individual, they did a stomach content inventory, and it was just red-winged blackbirds. Another individual, they did a food survey, carefully watching every item this bird was bringing back. 95% of the catches they witnessed were red-winged blackbirds. So they will actually hunt in kind of a swoop. So they'll come down and they'll kind of swoop at that bird. If that bird is moving along, they'll actually kind of slow and almost hover and then kind of stair-step down to grab that tasty little morsel of a bird. They do come in two color morphs. This is the dark morph. The light morph is equally beautiful, but just creamy all the way across. This bird's natural range is southwestern Florida. It was revered by the Calusa native tribe. All of their ceremonial artifacts had this hawk, and you can see it's a very distinctive shape. The head shape is very distinctive, the body shape is very distinctive. So unfortunately, Sable is with us because Sable was a gunshot victim. So admitted to the Miami Museum of Science about 3 days after Christmas, and Sable is 13 now. And they were speculating that some young man or woman, some teenager received a BB gun and thought these birds were good target practice. And of course they said, well, maybe they thought they were shooting at crows. But we know the protections are the same for a crow and a bald eagle. So that is completely illegal, and if they had caught the perpetrators, they could have punished them. The saddest part about it was we did get additional hawks in other years from that same area. So what it's done, it has left Sable with a wing that it tore the bone and the ligament has been affected. So on a windy day, she just can't pull that wing back in. That wing just becomes very tired, even just sitting on a perch. So she is not capable of natural flight and would not be able to provide for herself in the wild. They're really neat birds. They do build those heavy, heavy nests comparatively for the size of the bird. They use really big sticks. And again, they're up there so high. They rarely have more than 2 chicks. And again, they will take other things, prey items, mostly a lot of other birds, but red-winged blackbirds are the one that they are going to choose. They're gorgeous. If I can get Sable to put her wings out and show you just how.
Gives you a little bit of idea of how they would look if she was a light face.
The markings are just stunning, and you can see she's finishing her molt. She doesn't quite have those outer tail feathers in yet. But also, short tail is a little bit of a misnomer. Her tail isn't any shorter in relationship to her body than any other common hawk. So they were thinking that whoever spotted this bird in the wild just took a quick look. The wings are actually quite long. Couldn't call her a long wing because that's what they call falcons. So they chose short tail. And
Can she
they're
still
just
reproduce?
Pardon?
Can she still reproduce?
We don't give her the chance.
We're not a breeding facility.
That's not our bag.
We were wanting them, I was thinking.
Oh, if we could captive breeding? I don't think there are any captive. Are there captive breeding programs?
No, and the thing that's interesting too about short-tailed hawks is that we're so blessed to have someone like Dr. Ken Meyer and the Avian Research Conservation Institute that does so much with not only our short-tails but with our swallowtail kites as well. But the state of Florida doesn't really recognize this bird. Now, you shoot it, you're going to get arrested, but they don't take account. Like we know how many red shoulders, red tails, bald eagles, this, that, the other. This bird is not on their radar for the Fish and Wildlife.
Yeah.
They've tried, Dr. Meyer has tried for years. And I think it's interesting considering that this bird was probably more popular once upon a time than the red-shouldered hawk in the state of Florida.
So what some of the thought process is there isn't a large, with only 250 breeding pair, there's not really a large enough group to study, so they can't force those studies through to get the protections. So it is the most imperiled bird in probably the United States that has no protection at all. No designation.
Beyond the fact that all of our birds are protected, but it doesn't have, like if it was a swallowtail kite, it has that protection too because that's a threatened species.
Right, it's not designated as a species of threat or concern. Not even, I mean, the first step is a species of concern. It doesn't even have that designation. So it's almost like they're kind of ignored because there are so few of them. But Dr. Meyer does have some tracking studies on the adults. They have been able to transmit her, and so those are really interesting as well. But I'm just fascinated.
I'm just going to make a mention real quickly because we did pass around the feathers that went with the owl, and you notice
Most common birds we're going to have about this size, which is going to be the red-shouldered hawk. These birds just strike me as very stocky. So they've got shorter legs, a broader body. Their feet are not really big like you would think of taking large prey items for a bird that seems to have so much bulk. But they are excellent bird hunters. So also if you look, you'll see the cere area does look a lot different than some of our other hawks. It's got that bare patch beyond the cere itself there going into the feathering.
Between the two color morphs, is one more common than the other, or rare?
The dark morph is more common, and actually the two will breed, but one of that pair will take dominance and they will produce all dark or all light chicks. So.
And they also seem to think that there's more light south and more dark north. So I don't know if they really have numbers figured out that way, but I've heard that.
Do you have a light one at the center?
No, don't we wish. We have two darks.
Yes.
But we actually, 2 years ago, or a year ago, saw a light morph around Wakaiga State Park. So that was pretty exciting.
Which is interesting too. They are definitely expanding their range.
Yes.
Because I have heard that the rangers there have actually confirmed nesting.
Oh, yes, they have.
So-
If you try to say that they're not nesting in this area and around the Wakaiga State Park Ranger, he will come up and correct you.
So we have not, I haven't had any confirmations of where the nest might be, but I've heard that there are 2 different nest sites
Have you?
in the park, but they are dark morphs. I've heard that much.
Yeah, but
So-
we saw a light morph, so.
So who knows? Let's hope. Let's hope. So I'm going to bring Sable around.
How old is
If
she?
One thing
She's
I might
13.
mention as she's walking Sable around is that this bird is sort of what we call a semi-tropical bird. So you might kind of notice that the feathers and stuff on the head kind of fan out a little bit, because tropical birds, they do that, like if you think of a harpy eagle or some of the other eagles that are down in the tropics, those, so that they can collect all those sounds, because they got that from the owls. Yes.
In the wild, do they hang out with the vultures?
No. Short-tailed hawks don't really hang out with anybody. They're kind of a solitary bird, and that's one reason why I think some of the numbers are dwindling, because they are a little, like she said, they want to nest up high, they want to be in a heavy forested area. They'll come out sometimes and nest around, and hunt around the edge of that, but that's where they want to go back to.
So we saw hawks
Sometimes you
soaring
will see them soaring with
amongst
vultures, and they're
vultures
very hard. It's hard
at
to
Lake
identify
Monroe
for people because they love
that
the
were not recognizable to us.
Well, we've got a lot of turkey vultures coming down now, and then we have a lot of black vultures. But generally speaking, if you have a kettle going, it is a lot of vultures. Now, within there, and especially coming up to this time of the year, our immatures are going to come back. And immatures will go where vultures are. They see that, and they'll take the elevator up, as it were, because they understand that. And they also will see vultures have gotten some food or carry-on, old dead food on the side of the road, and the vultures will go there the immature eagles will go there as well. Actually, a mature eagle, of course, will eat carrion, and they don't care. But generally speaking, you can tell the eagles then, because when the eagle goes down to get the carrion, basically all the vultures say, bye. And they back off. Yes, ma'am.
I'm curious, what are these things on the feather? I don't know anything about birds at all, but see those little...
Oh, that's probably where we had some old, this has been sitting around for a long time. Those are eggs.
Like an insect egg?
Yeah, like mites.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's been around for a long time, so they're dead, so you don't need to worry about it. But you know what, that makes it really interesting, because one of the things I do like to do, especially different people come on Saturdays and they pique different interests, and we do have what we call a dissecting scope. So that would be a terribly interesting thing to show to a kid. So we try to make sure we pique a lot of interest in that sort of thing. So aren't you the observant one? Any other questions on the short-tailed hawk?
What do you feed them?
She gets a lot of quail, chick, and I know that they don't eat as much mammal, but we do feed mice. But she gets a lot of quail and chick. Our falcons, for instance, don't get anything but quail and chick. We don't really give them mammal at all. Unless it's a kestrel, because kestrel will eat field mice. So, you just kind of think about what do they eat in the wild, and we want to try to complement that and make sure they get the same thing. Yes?
Now, those birds have a short migration down south to Miami and that area in November, December, or what?
No. Generally speaking,
They
from things that I remember reading about them, is they when they're young, of course, they all kind of cruise around and check out different stuff. But once the time has come for them to settle down and become of breeding age, they generally find that they go back to where they, were raised, and that's pretty much where they stay. So the only wanderlust is really when they're younger. And again, as you said, it's pretty much just in South Florida.
short,
They don't go very far.
Okay.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
As bird eaters, would they compete with Cooper's hawks?
Oh, sure they would. Sure they would compete with the Cooper's hawk. But the Cooper's hawk, their hunting styles are different, number one, and where they live is a little different as well. You know, because as I said, these guys like, but Cooper's hawks like kind of heavily forested areas too, but Cooper's hawks have really learned about the urban areas. They've really learned about the bird feeders. So they are finding huge increases in numbers for the Cooper's hawks. So, well, while she still has him out in the back, I'm going to get out our last visitor because our time is going. And I want to make sure that this very special bird has her time. So everybody knows what this is, right?
Yes.
Crested caracara.
I thought it was a
So-
politician.
You say that again, because I have no idea.
This is a crested caracara.
Caracara?
A caracara.
That's
And,
very dinosaur.
like we always like to call them caracaras. Because as you'll see, if she decides to be friendly, I don't know, sometimes she is and sometimes she's talkative and sometimes she's not. But they get the name caracara because they will actually throw their head back and make that kind of and bring it back forward. So that's actually how they get their name. We have a lot of caracaras south of South Florida, semi-wetland areas and areas like that. I see them oftentimes on 64 or 62, 70 when I'm driving over. They're really a little bit more visible. Again, our breeding seasons start coming up in December, January.
They
And
come
so-
to the wetlands.
I'm sorry?
They come to the wetlands part. They
Oh,
were there
yes,
just
yes,
like
yes,
last
and you'll
month.
start seeing them. As a matter of fact, a lot of people are getting pictures of them and immatures right now. And they're all busy and active and happy and stuff, and then pretty soon they'll start, they are sort of terrestrial, so their nests are very low to the ground. And so once they start getting their nesting season and doing that sort, you won't see them for a while. And then once the kids come out, then you see them.
So they nest here.
Yes, they do. Yes, we have them nesting here, Texas and Arizona. So those are all the areas in the United States where these guys are. They're really quite strong populations still in Central and South America. But here in Florida, we've moved them back some, and unfortunately, because of a lot of habitat problems,
I've seen them in Costa Rica almost every time.
Yes, and you know, I understand they're very, very common in areas like that. But again, what's happening to us in Florida is that we're breaking up, and I said they're terrestrial, and all our terrestrial animals are having a little bit more time because we break it up. We don't make it easy for them to find one colony to go find another colony. I mean, I can give you a perfect example of that in that the burrowing owls used to be here in Central Florida, and that's another bird that I used to get in to the center. And I haven't had a burrowing owl in probably 10 years now.
Oh, wow.
So we haven't had them. They used to be out in the Plymouth Sorrento area, and they are totally gone. So I told you earlier that we had the little female American kestrel, and that was the only true falcon that bred in Florida, which is true. Believe it or not, this bird is more closely related to the falcons, it's what they call a parafalcon, than it is to any of the other birds of prey. And this bird of prey breeds in Florida, but it's not what they call a true falcon. So get back to that DNA thing, that's where this comes from. Yeah, DNA has definitely split the frog hairs on this. She's sitting here right now showing you a very nice example of that beautiful crest that she has on the top of the head. Yes, ma'am.
The bird is shaking. Is it nervous or cold?
No, she's nervous.
I was going to ask you that.
She's nervous, yeah. For one thing, I told Paula, it was kind of funny because I went to get her out. She was like, "Oh, cool, all right." And I said, "Yeah, you're not going to say that in about an hour."
Well, they've been lazy. They haven't done that.
They haven't done a lot. You have to understand, this is September. This is like our second program so far this year. We start winding up here now. We're going to do lots of programs for schools, civic groups, organizations like this, and they'll get a little bit more used to working again, as it were. But they've all been pretty spoiled, and she's really spoiled. Caracaras are very, very smart. They're very, very curious is a good word. And so they will do all kinds of different things. They're very entertaining for watching them grab things that they take back to their nest can be pretty interesting. Again, you'll notice these long legs as I walk around. And these legs, of course, show you, again, once again, that we have a terrestrial bird that's reaching down and grabbing things. So this bird is eating a lot of eggs, turtles, snakes. If it's on the ground, this bird's going to try and get it. That doesn't mean it's not also flying low distances and grabbing all kinds of birds that it can out of the. So we have some interesting stories, and I know Paula has some interesting stories too. But as I walk around, you might want to try to take a look at this bird's eyes and get as best look as you can. This is one of the few birds that you will ever see that has the most gorgeous eyelashes. Maybelline has got nothing. And then you'll sit there and you'll say to yourself, what in the world? So think once again, she's not a fast flyer, but she does live close to the ground. So therefore she has to protect those eyes. And so therefore she has lashes. Now can you imagine being a peregrine falcon, the fastest animal on earth, and having eyelashes? No, not going to work, not at all. So it's very amazing how Mother Nature takes all these different animals and has them so that they are adapted to living just perfectly within their environment. I mean, the difference between the short-tailed hawk and this caracara is really amazing.
Very strong.
So, I'm sorry?
She's a very strong flyer.
She is. There's
So the eyelashes are on the top.
She's got them on the top and bottom. Actually, on my phone, I have a close-up. That's my lock screen is a close-up of her eye, and they are absolutely amazing. It really is a pretty cool thing to see there. So,
How old is she?
what is she now, 8? I think she's 8 years old. Funny thing about her, she came to us from another facility. A lot of times people will work birds in one way or another. A lot of times people will work birds in one way or another. Sometimes it works for
Yeah,
them,
but I'll
sometimes
find it.
doesn't. And we've been lucky that a lot of times when they have a bird that doesn't exactly. Sometimes when they have a bird that doesn't exactly work for them, they may call us and see if we're interested. And I'll never forget one day somebody came up to me and they said, "I have a bird. I want to know if you want." And I said,
my God.
"Unless it's a crested caracara, just walk on down the road." And they turned around and went, "Well, it is. It's a crested caracara." Just started laughing. And so sure enough, we got this crested caracara, and we brought him, Mr. Quixote, they told us. So we brought him over. And I have a friend that she studies caracaras, Joni Morrison. She's written books. She's done everything. She's one of the most knowledgeable people in the world about crested caracaras. And she took one look at this bird, and it's a little bit like knowing a northern kestrel from a southern kestrel. Took one look at this bird and went, "Well, you can call it Quixote, but it's Mrs. Quixote." So sure enough, we did the DNA, and so she's Mrs. Q, which is fun because we do a lot of fun things with her. Now, she can't fly very well, but she can run around and she'll grab things here and there. She loves it if you hide things to find them because, again, that's what they do in the wild. They dig things and they find them. And so she really is quite entertaining with all of that. So her nickname now is Miss Q, which is funny because a lot of times she's missing her Q. So anyway, but we've talked about a lot. I don't know if anybody has any more questions about any of the birds that are out or about our facility. Yes?
I don't know much about birds. Molting, do all birds molt?
All birds molt.
And do, like,
We would expect that.
It's like shedding a fur coat for like the winter?
It's a little bit like shedding your coat for the winter, although they don't, like dogs will shed a coat to get a coat and shed a coat to lose a coat. These guys generally just drop their feathers once a year. Usually when that's done is after the demands of having a nest and raising young is over. But prior to migration. So a lot of birds are molting now. And Paula was telling me that we're not open in August, we're closed in August. And the reason why, one of the reasons why is because it's so blasted hot, we can't walk outside. And if we do, we get shut by lightning. But the other thing is because all our birds are molting. And actually, I don't know, it got kind of crazy when I tried to come in. But when I got these guys out, I had 3 feathers tonight. So 3 birds that I picked up were dropping feathers. So they're still molting a little right now, and they should be finishing up with that.
Yeah, and we have a bird owl that loses her entire tail at once. And then she pulls this sad little, oh no, I can't come to the feeding perch because I can't fly.
But that's not true because all barred owls do that. So it is, I know the first time I had a barred owl do that, I thought,
Did Patch drop off?
well, he might as he gets older.
Yeah.
So, but I just think it's something, I don't know why they do it like that, but maybe it's just faster. Any other questions?
Was she?
Ladies first.
No. I just wanted to know if she was injured or.
Yes, actually, you can take one look at her, and this was a bird that actually she was spotted by, because the biologists are very interested in this species. Again, we're losing them. And so, and caracaras are a very interesting species, and so you can see, can't you? No, you don't see the feather, you don't see the wing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
left
and
wing.
actually, that's exactly what happened, was that they were watching the nest area. Q came up to the top and they went, we got to get that bird. So it took them a little while, but they trapped her and took her into a facility. And they knew at that point in time she was not going to be re-releasable. So they started working with her. And after 2 years, they said, well, we can't do anything with her. And we were like, well, okay.
We were happy to get her. But as Carol said, they're sensitive birds. And that's one of the reasons they're studying them. Dr. Joan Morrison is doing a study now out of the Archibald Field Station. And if you are not aware of the website called virtualfield.org, you want to find that. Just type in Joan Morrison Caracara. They've condensed that 2-hour talk down to 7 minutes. But what they are studying is the effects of habitat change and human interaction with these birds because of their high sensitivity level. So not simply habitat loss, but if habitat goes from something as closely related as just open land to agricultural, it can really devastate the group of birds that are living there. So they are studying these birds in groups. What they have found is that one of 5 things will happen. Either the mated pair of birds will adapt to that new land use, continue to nest and raise their young. They will move to other suitable habitat if they're lucky enough to find it, nest and raise their young. They'll move to other suitable habitat and continue to forage but not breed, or they will just wander the area, not really successfully foraging and not really breeding, and in the worst case scenario, which they have had happen, one or both of the pair will die. So habitat change is so spectacularly affecting these sensitive birds, and they think there are more cases than just the caracara out there that really react very, very strongly to any type of disturbance.
Might I bring up the short-tailed hawk?
Yes.
And the reason why I did this a moment ago was just because I was going to make a notice about how tactile these guys are.
Oh, yeah.
And that is one thing. She kind of almost demands sometimes that they're very touchy with each other. So sometimes she
The
does.
feathers in the head look different from the rest. Are they? Or
No, they're not necessarily
It looks
different.
softer
But
from here,
yeah,
like,
it's just
compared
this
to-
cap that they call it. I mean, that's their crest. And this is the thing that gives them the name crested, is because then it lifts up in all kinds of, we've got some wild pictures of her with this crest up.
It's a bad toupee. But I have some information up here, and if you do grab one of Q's business cards, you will see the best expression ever.
Yes, ma'am.
The lecture by Joan Morrison on our YouTube channel. She was the keynote for the Hampshire Birdie Festival.
Yes, and actually she'll be down here next, in about a week or 2, doing a presentation for the Raptor Research Foundation. So she is really something else and studies, not only and I think just a quick thing, and then we'll stop. But I think it's very interesting to note that the birds in Florida are totally different than the birds she studies, like in New Mexico and Arizona. She says, like the birds in Florida, they're kind of curious. Sometimes they might get to the point where if you'd like try to catch one, no, they'll remember that, and they will, anytime you come back to that nest area, they'll scatter. But in New Mexico, she says a car comes around the corner and they're like, whoa, whoa, car, go. And so they're very hard to study. They're very hard to study there. They actually, I think the only way they're getting anything is because they've had 1 or 2 come into rehab centers, and the states have allowed them to put radio telemetry on them so they can follow them that way.
And in the lecture, Joe talks about how hard it was to trap these birds for the study and about using the mounted caracara and the type of nets they have to use.
Yeah,
so I don't know if you have a
smart.
long version, but that short 7-minute one on
Thank
virtual
you.
field is great. But there is a book that's just recently been written. It's called The Most Remarkable Creature, and they have studied the 10 species of caracara worldwide, and they have determined that it is indeed the most intelligent bird of prey.
Wow.
So on Saturdays, you can come out, and Michelle actually does a variety of behaviors with Q. She's one of our volunteers that really took an interest in Q and has been trying to do a lot of enrichment. And so Q will actually use puzzle boxes designed for dogs, where she has to open a door and rotate to get little bits of food. Although she is so smart,
She is so smart.
she's so smart that if she gets bored with that, she has realized she can simply pick it up and dump it upside down. So she'll humor you. She'll hunt for a couple, and then she's like, meh, I'm hungry. I'm hungry. So I hope you will come out.
You want to mention about whatever thing
I've got
you're planning
newsletters
for?
here for you and cards. So we
We're called
are
the
doing
Avian
a
Reconditioning
fundraising
Center.
event
Thank you.
next Saturday, so a week from Saturday.
raptors
It's
is
called
already
Hops and
there.
Hops. And so we invite everyone to come out and buy a bird a beer. So it's going to be at 3 Odd Guys Brewery in Apopka. And I will leave this up here while we load. There is, as Q would like to think, a Q code. It's actually a QR code. So you can scan that, and that will take you right to our event website. The newsletter has all the ways to connect with us inside. So help yourself to the
We
information.
have a card, and it has our webpage, and we're also on Facebook for those of you that do that kind of thing. So.
And Instagram, and for any photographers out here, part of the silent auction at our fundraiser is going to feature as one of the silent auction gifts a half-day photo workshop with Jack Rogers. And so he is fairly well known. He's the one that works at the St. Augustine Birding Fest, and he has been a friend of our center for years. So he is going to donate that as well. So thank you so much again to everybody that supports us out there. I do see a few.